My 2024 college football team tier list. First things first, we're going to start off with Florida. They're terrible. They suck. They're not very good. They got blown up by Miami. They're not very good. They're not playoff contenders. They're in the SEC and they're playing like shit. So, yeah. Next up, Missouri. Their playoff contenders are very good. They destroyed Buffalo the other day, 38 to nothing. Brady Cook didn't really do anything, but Missouri still blew them out. SEC, Oregon State, they're not in the conference, so I put them a terrible list. So, yeah, they're not good. Texas A&M, mid. They're mid. They're not a good team at all. They're not playoff contenders. Wake Forest, mid. Mid. They play Ole Miss in a couple weeks. They're going to get their asses kicked there. Next up, South Carolina. I think they're above average. They can be better, but they're not playoff contenders or conference contenders, obviously, but they're above average. Next up, Vanderbilt, mid. They're mid. Next up, Arizona State, mid also. Arizona, they're above average. They're not very good at lead. They're not good, but they're above average. Arkansas, mid. Auburn, terrible. They lost to freaking California. They suck. Cal. I'm talking about Cal. Next up, Alabama. They're obviously title contenders. Alabama are title contenders. Baylor, mid. Boston College, they're above average. They show an improvement this season. Cal is terrible. Somehow they beat Auburn. Clemson, okay, this is pretty interesting. I'm putting above average. Obviously they got their ass kicked by Georgia, and they destroyed Appalachian State. They're not going to playoffs though. Colorado is mid. They're not very good at all. Duke is mid. They're not very good. Florida State is mid. Last year they were title contenders, but not this season. And Georgia, they're obviously title contenders. What in the world is that debate? Georgia is clearly title contenders. They're probably the favorites right now. Georgia Tech is mid. They beat Florida State, who's not very good. Illinois is above average. Indiana is above average. Iowa State above average. Above average. Iowa above average. Kansas State conference contenders. They're not a playoff team, but they're conference contenders. Kansas is above average. Kentucky is mid. They got their asses kicked by South Carolina on yesterday or 2 days ago, whatever. Louisville, conference contenders. I mean, they're not playoff team yet, but yeah, LSU is above average. They have to compete to all these really good SEC schools that are very good this season. Maryland is mid. Miami is playoff contenders. Miami is very good with Cam Ward on the quarterback. Cam Ward transferred from Washington State. Miami has a pretty easy schedule this season. They can easily go undefeated like Florida State did last year. Miami, playoff contenders. Next up, Michigan State. They're above average, I guess. Next up, Michigan, above average. Yes, I know. Michigan are your reigning defending national champions. Up here, they were title contenders, but this season they're above average. They got destroyed by Texas, 31-12 at Michigan Stadium. And at home, they got their asses kicked. Michigan lost Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy, Blake Corum, Roman Wilson. You know it. They lost the whole entire national title team last year. Michigan is not the same as they used to be. Michigan is not making the playoffs this season. Next up, Minnesota, mid. Mississippi State is mid. NC State, mid. They got their asses kicked by Tennessee the other day. Nebraska is above average. Northwestern is terrible. Notre Dame is above average. They lost their freaking Northern Illinois this past weekend. Next up, Ohio State. They're obviously title contenders. Ohio State is looking very good. They destroyed Western Michigan 56-0. That defense is so good. They're better. I think this defense is better in this year than last year, to be honest with you. Ohio State. I'm an Ohio State fan, by the way. I hope this team does so good in the playoff. Next up, Oklahoma State. They're conference contenders. They barely beat a not so good Arkansas team, but still, they're conference contenders. Next up, Oklahoma, conference contenders. They barely beat Houston. Next up, Ole Miss. They are playoff contenders. I'm not going to put in the title contender yet because they have to show me. They have to show me what they can actually do against a solid team. I know Ole Miss is looking so good these past couple of weeks, or not couple of weeks, 2 weeks. Well, the season just basically started, so yeah. Ole Miss playoff contenders. Next up, Oregon playoff contenders. Obviously, I know. They have to play Ohio State in a couple weeks, but they barely beat Boise State. But Boise State's supposed to be a really good non-Power 5 team, supposedly. Yeah, Oregon playoff contenders, not title contenders yet. Penn State. This season, they're making the playoffs. For all these years, the 14 playoff format. This season is a 12-team playoff format. Even though, remember last season, all teams have to get in with one loss, but this season you get in with undefeated 1 loss and 2 losses teams get in. So Penn State playoff contenders, even though they have 2 losses, they still get in. 2-loss team, Penn State gets in. I think they'll lose to Ohio State or Oregon. Pitt is mid. Purdue is mid. Rutgers is above average. Stanford is terrible. Syracuse is above average. TCU is above average. Tennessee, playoff contenders. Tennessee is playoff contenders. Nico Imalima is his name, the quarterback. He is looking pretty good. The Tennessee running game looks so good. I think their wide receiver core is good, but I have to look up their details. But I know it's their first couple of weeks. I know Tennessee is looking fantastic right now. I know they play Georgia later in the year. Next up, Texas Tech. They're mid. Next up, Texas. This season is the real deal for Texas. They're title contenders without a doubt. The first 2 weeks of the season, I know it's week 3. It's obviously the beginning of the year. There's still a lot of time left in college football. I know. But Texas looks so good right now. Their defense is really good. Quinn Ewers, Isaiah Bond, and those people are looking so good. Jaden Blue, the running back, he's back. Texas is the real deal. And they have to play this team right here in a couple weeks. Georgia and Texas. That game's going to be the game of the year. It's going to be played at Texas. Georgia and Texas. I don't care who loses. The loser of the team is still going to make the playoffs, obviously. The loser is still getting in the playoffs. With a 1-loss, 2-loss, they're still getting in. Most likely, Georgia or Texas will have an undefeated 13 or 14-0 season. One of those teams are going undefeated in the playoff, without doubt. UCLA is terrible. North Carolina is average. USC, I'm high on USC. USC is playoff contenders. USC has a real defense now, ladies and gentlemen. I'm going to say that again. USC has a real defense now. They fired Alex Grinch this season, but they hired a new defensive coordinator. I don't know his name. I have to look it up. I know USC has a new quarterback named Miller Moss. That core is legit. USC has Lincoln Riley, their head coach. He can make Miller Moss from mid quarterback to a freaking Heisman quarterback. Look what he did to Caleb Williams. I know. USC is playoff contenders, a Big Ten school. Oregon and USC, Ohio State, Penn State, all Big Ten teams have a chance to make the playoff. Ooh, next up, Utah. Utah's playoff contenders. I know. I think they're the best team in the Big 12 right now. I know Kansas State barely beat Tulane the other day. What the heck? I know Kansas State beat Tulane barely, but I don't really trust Kansas State all that much. I think they're going to lose to an unranked team in a couple weeks from now. But Utah has a really good chance to make the playoff for all these years. They almost made the playoff in 2019 when they were 4th or 5th ranked team in the country. They lost to Oregon. Remember that? Yeah. Justin Herbert and that team. If Utah would have won that game, I think they will play LSU over Oklahoma. I think Utah would probably still lose to LSU that year, but still. This season alone, I know Cam Rising got injured against Baylor the other day, but Utah won 23-12. Utah didn't really do anything in the second half, but Utah's playoff contenders. Their schedule is pretty easy. Virginia is mid. Virginia Tech is mid. Washington State's not even the real conference anymore. I want to put him in the mid section. Yeah, Washington is above average. I know they went to the title game last year. They lost every single player on that team to the NFL, but this season Washington has a new quarterback, new coach, new wide receiver core, new running back, new defense, and so forth. Washington ain't the same. They're the same exact situation as Michigan. They ain't the same. West Virginia is above average. Wisconsin, they have a big game coming up this weekend against Alabama. At this moment, they're above average. Wisconsin's above average. Well, guys, that's my list, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you liked my list. Hope you enjoy, like, and subscribe. I haven't been saying like and subscribe as of late. Now I'm starting to say that. Alright, guys. There it is. Peace.